Thanks there, Peter. I've just seen a video from President Barack Obama reassuring the world that the sun will rise tomorrow, no matter the outcome of the election. Yes, it's come to that. The current president of the United States is just trying to reassure people that tomorrow is another day and the sun will actually rise in the sky. I want to talk a little bit more about this very unusual election. Joining me now, James Norton, president of Play Action Strategies. Thanks, James. And we have Doug Sloan. He's a consultant for the National Capital Strategy Group. And as always, Marwan Bashara, senior political analyst. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. The stock markets are plummeting. If Donald Trump becomes president, and he has said so many things that have unnerved the world, basically the entire world for the most part, how long does this uncertainty last? Does it go until he's inaugurated and we see what kind of president he wants to be? Let's all take a shot at that. What do you think?
Well, look, I think it's clear for many people around the world that populist campaigner is one thing, president of the world superpower is another thing. I think even for Trump and his people, it's going to be clear soon enough that whatever has been said on the campaign is one thing, and the challenges of the world is another thing. Otherwise, if he's going to start talking about scrapping this agreement and that agreement, I think, first of all, the world's going to go into economic depression. Second, there's going to be a major security issues both in Southeast Asia and in Europe. Already Europe is talking about breaking away from American security assurances. I don't know what's going to happen with Tokyo and South Korea. The Philippines and Vietnam will probably now leave the U.S. security assurances in terms of the South China Sea and probably join China. So if Trump thinks of carrying any one of those threats that he spoke about during the campaign, and I think the world will be in a complete meltdown. So I hope we don't get there, and I hope he realizes sooner rather than later that it takes far more pragmatism than what it is on the campaign stuff.
Douglas, you're a Democrat. Do you have any hope that Donald Trump has the ability to not be the Donald Trump we've seen him?
I don't think so. He was supposed to do that when he became the Republican nominee. He was supposed to pivot and start moving towards the center and seem more presidential, like we saw Mitt Romney do after he was able to make it through the primaries 4 years ago. We didn't see that from him. He became even more virulent. He became even more divisive. He became even more controversial. I don't see that happening, unfortunately. If we are to go by his past behavior, which is really all that we can go by, we can't even control this guy on Twitter. His campaign team had to take his Twitter account from him. I don't see, this is someone that has shown that he needs adult supervision on the campaign trail. I don't know if, again, this is going to sound cliche at this point, I don't know if we should be trusting him with the nuclear codes. We're looking at a very bad situation here economically, not just in the United States where Dow futures have dropped 780 points, but also in the world. And we have someone at the helm that has shown time and time again that he doesn't care anything about himself. So that's a real issue, a real problem that it looks like America is going to have to deal with.
Well, we shall see. We shall see. We don't know yet. James, there was a talk. Governor Kasich from Ohio came out and said Trump's son approached me to be vice president and said he really just wants to be a cheerleader, just a figurehead. This is Kasich speaking, sure. And that he was going to let his vice president run the government. Is that a possibility? Do you think Trump is going to be able to? Do you think that was just thrown out there by Kasich, or is that the plan?
I think, first of all, the markets like certainty, and the markets don't know who the president's going to be tomorrow. And I think, as soon as you figure out that whether it's President Trump or President Clinton, you're going to have certainty tomorrow. So I think the markets will settle themselves out. So that's just first, to answer your first question. Second of all, it's a hearsay question from our answer from Governor Kasich. I think that, Mike Pence has certainly shown to be a qualified, candidate for vice president. I think if you've looked at, Joe Biden and Dick Cheney in the last two administrations, they certainly played a big role, whether it's foreign policy, health care, national security, other type of things. So, certainly I think Mike Pence would be a partner. I think he would be somebody that would help Donald Trump with Congress. You talk about adult supervision. I think that Congress certainly is supposed to play that role. I mean, that's what the founders had in mind when they set up the legislative branch. So I think that there will be some learning curves. I think if you think about You know, Barack Obama was a surprise presidential winner. George Bush was a surprise winner. Bill Clinton was a surprise winner. So I think if you think through time, especially the last couple elections, we've had a lot of surprise winners.
I have to stop you there, though, because none of those previous candidates they didn't get accused of sexually assaulting women or promised to ban Muslims or build a wall and call Mexicans rapists. There has never been a presidential candidate like Donald Trump, ever. So when you say the markets are going to calm down, there is real uncertainty about his economic plan. Moody's said it would cost 4 million jobs and lead to a recession, if not a depression. And we know what happens when there's depressions. It leads to armed conflict. So are we looking at that kind of case scenario, or does the better angels Donald Trump appear?
No, it's not a question of better angels. It's actually all presidents. President Obama promised us a world free of nuclear weapons. The United States will be spending $1 trillion over the next 30 years to modernize its nuclear weapons. So presidents say one thing during the campaign, but I think they have to behave something or other way after when they become president. Now, look at one thing, just to give you an example of change. In the beginning of his campaign, Trump said he's going to be neutral on Israel-Palestine. And then by the end of the year, he said he's going to be completely pro-Israel. What happened? They said, well, actually, he learned. I think President Trump, if I could use do you mind if I use that?
No, by all means.
I think President Trump is going to be a president who's going to be learning on the job. That's a very unfortunate thing, and that will create a lot of uncertainty, because what we know from the last year and a half is, how do you resolve the economic crisis? I'm going to make everyone wealthy. How do you resolve the security issues? I will take on ISIS because I know how to take on ISIS better than all the generals. How do you resolve the questions of Europe? The Europeans are all my friends. What do you do with the military? All the generals love me. These are not solutions.
That's the problem. He has no real specifics regarding his policies, be them economic or foreign policies, and that is some of the problems, that is some of the things that lead to all this uncertainty in the markets. So we're looking at someone who we don't know what's going to happen. We don't have a record to go on with Donald Trump because he's never been a senator. He's never been a congressman. He's never been a governor. We're looking at someone that has zero public service experience. His only experience is in business. And the business world is very different.
Well, there was that reality TV show, too. Don't forget that. James, it's looking like there'll be... Service. Yeah, don't forget the reality TV show, because it's 2016. James, we're looking at a system that the founders obviously wanted checks and balances. The Republicans have run the board. They'll have the majority of governorship, they'll have the House, they'll have the Senate, they'll have the presidency, they'll have the Supreme Court. So what do we see from the Republicans? Top 3 things that we see that they work together and they get done.
Sure. Well, I think that, first of all, you know, certainly Donald Trump is the top of the ticket, but I think you also need to understand that separate from Donald Trump and his personality and some other issues that people focus on, you know, the voters sent a message tonight, right? And the voters said that they weren't happy with Washington. They see a disconnect. They're going to basically throw everybody out, and they're going to burn the place down, and they're going to start over. And they decided to pick the outsider of all outsiders, and they went with Donald Trump, right? So that's kind of the first thing. The second thing is, to answer your question, you know, certainly fixing Obamacare and having some tweaks there. You know, there was just the announcement not too long ago of rising health care costs for Obama. That'll be certainly top of the ticket. I think defense spending will be the #2 issue that they'll look at. You know, there's a lot of issues in terms of how that goes, and certainly some sort of economic package, you know, in terms of how is the government going to pay down the $20 trillion debt? I think that's a big issue, and I think the voters are speaking that. I think there's a lot of folks in Congress that are looking to try to address that.
But in this fact-free election, the thing that nobody has talked about is that Donald Trump has promised to cut taxes, increase military spending, even though the U.S. spends more than the next 8 countries combined on military spending. He's going to spend more, cut taxes, and the deficit is just going to disappear.
And he said he was going to repeal and replace Obamacare,
which means
fix it.
Tens of millions of people will lose health insurance. Well, what is that saying? May you live in interesting times? It looks as if we may just be living through it. So that's the latest from Washington for now. For now, Peter, back to you in Doha.